Welcome back to the Witching Half Hour or So podcast. I'm so glad you decided to tune in today and have a listen. I'm honored to be in your earbuds, on your smart speaker, spending time with you as you do the things you do, whether it's commuting, walking your dog, or like me, do you listen to podcasts while you do your chores around the house? I'm so grateful that you're here. Today is a fun episode. At least I'm going to try to make it pretty fun. We are looking at the Tower card, one of the most ominous cards of the tarot. It really freaks people out. It is probably the only card I'm really scared of. So I want to have fun with you as we dive into this because it's a bit of a heavy topic, right? If you're new here, we have been going through the high arcana of the tarot, one card at a time. And I use my expertise as a tarot reader. I've been studying the tarot since I was 17. So that's a long time. That was back in the 90s. I started studying. I started this journey. So I'm bringing to the table many years of experience sitting across from clients, talking about the things that are big and heavy and full of feels for them, because that's when people come to us for readings, right? They come with their woes and their worries. So I'm going to share with you all kinds of things I've learned. Before we dive in though, I'd like to invite you to a few things. One of them is my newsletter. If you haven't signed up for my newsletter, it's on my website, jodiannepsychicmedium.com. Link will be in the description and in the show notes. It's actually where you can find all the show notes too. I put out a newsletter once a month. It gives you a look at what topics are coming out on the podcast, events I'm doing, classes I might be hosting. It's a high consent, low volume newsletter. When you give me your address, I am not going to inundate your inbox with a bunch of marketing. I respect your space. I respect your consent. I'm always going to warn you before I launch anything, and you can opt out of those without changing your newsletter subscription. It's called A Little Bit of Magic, and it's a monthly love letter from me to you. Because this esoteric path that we are walking is full of bumps, it's full of bruises. I'm working on my healing work, and I want you to feel connected to someone who's in this world and in this path through my love letter to you. Other thing I want to invite you to is I have started hosting a monthly new moon circle. I want to manifest the most abundant, amazing life we can. I've been using the moon and where it is in the sky to do some manifestation work for about a year now, and it has profoundly changed my life. It's awesome. So I want to invite you to these circles, 100% free. Sign up is on my website under New Moon. Click in, you'll get the link. It's a reoccurring link. I'd love to see you. I think that is all my housekeeping. Let's talk about the tarot cards. Like I said at the beginning of our episode, this is the only card I worry about in a tarot spread. Because it signifies a very big and usually sudden change, that has a lot of upheaval attached to it. I was taught way back when I started that the Tower is not just transformation. There's lots of cards in the tarot that talk about our lessons and stepping into our power or moving through transformation or learning how to balance. Like many cards have big lessons attached to them. The thing with the Tower card is it's not just change. It's really excavational change, getting deep, going down, getting to the root of a pattern or problem. It's not just healing. It's not just transition. It is going in and repairing what is broken. That root cause, it's that chain breaker kind of energy. When the healing you're doing, the change you're making is probably on a multi-generational pattern or a life path pattern. There will have been echoes of this in other areas of your life. Sometimes you're aware of them. Sometimes you're kind of blind to them until this Tower card happens. This is like a phoenix fire moment. And I am so over the romanticizing of phoenix fire. It is hot. It burns everything you don't need and everything you love, and it leaves you with ashes. Is it beautiful? Does it produce some of the best growth of your life? Oh, 100%. Yeah. Is it easy? No, my love. No, it's not. It's not something you want to just invite into your life every month. No. And that's what this Tower card is. If you've been with me for a little while and following me on my YouTube channel, you know that I do a year ahead spread every year. And our year ahead spread in 2023 for our collective conscious, the energy that's flying around in the world, had a Tower card. I'm pulling this out of the top of my head, so I think it was in July. It was definitely in the summer. So many of you have hit this wall, are still in the excavation process, are working through the kind of energies of this Tower card. I usually like to decode the symbology in the tarot and the different artwork. The Tower is like very straightforward. 99% of decks are going to show you a tower, like a cylindrical tower, lightning striking through the sky, smashing into the tower, and someone jumping out to save their life. Not cryptic, not hard to decode. You are at a place where both roads forward, indecision and decision, are full of hardship. Do you know what I mean? You're in the tower, there's a lightning storm, your tower's rocking, it's shaking, it's going to come down around you. Indecision is staying in the tower. It crumbles around you. Making a decision is jumping out the window. The only way forward has its own problems, right? You're going to break your bones. There's nothing to catch you. Sometimes the tower is drawn on like a rocky terrain. Often it's in a pretty desolate desert. Either way forward is difficulty. And this is a real thing in life, right? A lot of times in life, we are stuck between a rock and a hard place. We have a way forward that looks scarier and more treacherous than staying where we are, even though where we are isn't pleasant. And I think that's the thing with the tower. It really shows that aspect of the human experience. Many of us have been there before, where we stay in patterns that don't serve us because the idea of change, of moving forward, the transition seems so scary that it's kind of like staying with the devil you know, rather than moving through things and risking change. It's really not a fun choice, right? Like, do you want to stay in your big, beautiful tower that you've built and grown up, even though it's crashing down around you? Or do you want to jump to your death, unsure of what will happen to you? Will you die? Will you not die? But your tower's collapsing. What are you going to do? That's the energy of the tower. There's definitely an upheaval and it's out of your control, right? It's lightning striking you, coming down from the skies. No matter how powerful you are, no matter how brilliantly you built your tower, you can't control lightning. And I think it's neat that we often kind of in our minds, when we think of someone who's like up in a tower, we're thinking of like, well, definitely me. I always think of Merlin or like an alchemist or someone with power. And you'll see too, in some of the cards, the person jumping has a crown on their head to symbolize that they're powerful, that they have position. it's usually not a serf or a poor person who's down on their luck that lives up in a tower, right? It's someone with the means to build this great monolith in a desert where there's nothing else around. And I feel like that's a piece of this card, that what keeps us from moving forward is our ego. That belief that we are powerful, not empowered, that false belief that we are infallible, that ego that built the Titanic and called it unsinkable, and then it sunk on its maiden voyage. That's the kind of ego I feel is wrapped up in the tower, where we're blinded, where we've inflated ourselves to the point of thinking we're infallible. We're clinging to something that maybe isn't serving us, but we can't see it because our ego's in the way. Some decks will show two people jumping out of the tower. It's almost like the wizard and his apprentice. Or they have people at the bottom kind of looking up. And I like to think of the friend at the bottom as that person in your life who's been saying to you, honey, you gotta change. And we just look at them and say, no, 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 no. And they're waiting for you to jump. And they know that doom is coming. And I think there's a piece there of the tower card. We know in our heart of hearts, we know it's not as safe as we believe it is. We're just too afraid to leave. And I like to think that when we're in this tower moment, the reason we're often in this tower moment, it seems sudden. It seems like the storm came out of nowhere. But there's probably been grumblings before this, that there was change that needed to be made. Because you've got that ego in there, that very human ego, whether it's the feeling of you are too strong and mighty for the storm to knock you down, or whether it's the fear of moving forward because change is so difficult. So we'd rather stick in our tower knowing it could crack and crumble than risk leaving our tower for the unknown world. What is outside of it? We don't know. We don't know what's on the other side of the change. And that can really keep us in a place of non-movement. Lots of reference material will tell you that the tower in this card represents the Tower of Babel. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with this story. It is an Old Testament story, and I want you to remember that tarot cards are full of Christian and Kabbalistic symbology. I know it seems odd, but I want you to remember that tarot comes from northern Italy, and the first references we have of it are in the 15th century. That was a very Christian culture. And as we move forward, they were then adopted by the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. And this is in the late 1890s to early 1920s. The Golden Dawn was a secret society throughout Britain. And we know that British culture in the 1800s was heavily laden with Christian beliefs, with Christian ideals. That was the culture at the time. So of course, the redrawing of these decks and the reproduction of these decks and the use of these decks, when we look at the symbology, it's usually going to be full of Christian dogma, ideas that come from that faith about good and evil, about right and wrong. There's a lot of real black and white thinking throughout the symbology. It's only in very recent years that we have this New Age revival where we see the tarot from a female-centric, goddess-loving perspective. Many renditions of the tarot take their symbology from that Christian dogma of the past. So, back to the Tower of Babel. In that story, a big tower was built up, and it was struck down by God with lightning. And loves, this is a very nutshell version of this story. So the theme behind this story, this biblical story, is that man's ego gets in the way of connecting with God, that the tower is going to crumble. And it's being struck down by a power outside of you. As humans, we don't like that. We don't like to be unpowerful. We like to be powerful. What I think some of the lessons are in this card is that once everything is cleared, once the initial shock is over, and you're examining the ruin before you, that's when you will start to see the logic of why your beautiful creation fell. I feel like you will find and discover the signs that were always there. Not during the crisis, mind you. You got to get to the other side of it first. And I want you to remember that this card is in the last set of 7 of the tarot. And if you've listened to all the episodes on tarot that have brought us here, you'll remember that each set of 7, the high arcana is broken up into, has its own vibration. They build off each other. We start with learning about the truth of empowerment, learning about the tools, tapping into source energy and our divinity. The second set is learning about our inner truth, diving deeper, looking at our emotional body, looking at the ideas we carry, how that affects who we show up as in the world, how that affects our ability to balance life. And then the third set is those high vibes. And that's where we're looking at the deepest meaning of power, the alchemist meaning of changing our soul from lead into gold. And that's where we have the tower. Super scary card, super destruction all around us that really, really feels sudden and scary and like there's no good choices. But on the other side, there will be goodness. This is the last initiation. And of course, it's going to involve the ego. We're always struggling against our own self. We're always struggling against this human nature that we have. There's nothing bad about our human nature. It's just something we need to work with all the time. One of the beautiful things about this very difficult card being in this high vibe set of 7 is that we have tools, right? Not only have we probably circled around this same issue on a more surface level in our life, we have very specific tarot cards that can help us with the tower. The first one is the Justice card. We learned in that card how to get out of our head and see with our heart, how to find truth. We can use that lesson in this card. Get out of our ego, get out of our mind, get out of our logic, sink into our heart space and take in the whole perspective, the whole situation. Examine the truth behind why the tower fell. Why did this need to crumble? Why were we hanging on to something that wasn't good for us? Why were we hanging on past the point of health? Why were we sitting in the tower, avoiding looking out the window to the typhoon hurricane on the horizon? Where were we in denial? The Justice card teaches us how to tune into truth and how to see truth. Some truths are ugly. That doesn't make them less true. It just makes them ugly and hard to see. The other card that's going to teach you how to go through this with grace is the second card of the High Arcana. Do you remember her? The High Priestess card? She stands for the innate power you were born with, that divine sight, the ability to see clearly, to look beyond the veil and to find the hidden cords that tie all of these patterns together. These are the 2 lessons that are really going to help you excavate, dig out from the roots, the rotten foundation that you built your tower upon, so that next time you can build on solid ground. It's heavy stuff, hey? Super heavy stuff, but necessary stuff. And this is why I do not romanticize Phoenix Fire. I do not romanticize this card. And I'm always cautious with my clients when this card comes up. So now that we've looked at the meaning, let's look at what it really means in a spread, what it means to your client. When this card comes up, you're going to know that something is brewing on the horizon. Depending on your client and where they are in their ego and their denial and their patterns of being in a place of hanging on to things that don't serve them, they might not be aware, right? They might not see the storm. They might not feel the storm. So you see this omen in their cards. Now you got to talk to them about, hey, this is a tower. This is a big feels card. This is a big deal card. This is a card that is going to bring upheaval to your life. And not with a little u, like a big U. We're not talking Tonka truck excavator. We're talking the real thing they use at a job site. Sometimes within the spread, you're going to find hints to what area of their life is going to be the trigger point of this destruction, what pattern they have. Sometimes you're not. Sometimes it can't come out in the spread because they're in denial. So you're not going to be able to find what they're excavating. You're not going to be able to find the root. And this is one of the really kind of beautiful and frustrating things about reading tarot effectively and being a great reader is sometimes no matter how hard you dig for the answer, your guides and their guides are not going to give it to you because the lesson is in the process. We can bring them information, we can bring insight to our clients, but we are not fixing their lives. We're not robbing them of the ability to walk through the fire. If I walk through the fire for you and give you all the answers, you're not learning anything. I can set some tools down before you, lead you to the edge of the fire, and tell you how hot it is, but I can't go through it for you. You have to learn that yourself. And that's tricky. Does that make sense? Did my metaphor make sense? I hope so. So you can look to your spread for hints, but you can also talk to your client and say, look, you've got something on the horizon that's going to be big. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it's tied to your life path. It's tied to lessons that you may have thought you'd already finished working on. And then look to what other cards are supporting it. Give your client information on how they can move through this with grace. You can look at whatever spread you're doing. What are the helpful cards around this? What cards are in the position of helpfulness? And point your client to that. Be like, hey, you've got these cards here. They're working in your favor. These are the tools you can use to help you through this time of transition, this very difficult time. And then you can look in your spread and you can look for the cards that are in that opposing position, the negative influences. And that can sometimes point you to what is the root cause? What area of your client's life is this showing up in? Where are the hints? Where is your client in denial? There's always something to be learned from looking at the supportive cards in a spread. You know, I think that spreads are the real key to meeting your client's needs. They're so important. Not just knowing the meanings of the cards, but knowing where they are, how they're showing up, what aspect they are to your client. Okay, I think that's everything I want to say about the Tower card. Thank you so much for listening today. Thank you for being a part of my Earbud Coven. I'm so very grateful for you and all the feedback I get from you guys, the personal messages, the comments. It's absolutely heartwarming. I'm so glad you're part of my coven. I really hope that this episode helps you as a reader, whether you're reading oracle cards and have a difficult message, or whether you are like me and in love with tarot decks and have tricky cards that present for your clients, where you're helping them navigate the storms of their life and difficult times in their lives. Okay, my loves, I'll see you soon. Oh, and I almost forgot. This episode will have a YouTube episode that goes along with it, looking at the actual artwork. Since the symbology is so straightforward, I'm probably just going to be geeking out on some of the decks I love. If you Google The Witching Half Hour or so, the YouTube channel will come up. And of course, show notes will be on my website. Okay, bye now. Get your notes. There we go. Okay. Oops, Luna's doing something. Luna, just lie down. You're fine. No, don't knock over the computer. One of the most ominous. I gotta look at how to say that again. Omnious. The first one is the Justice card. The first one. I can't talk.